Let me bless you as we get going here. I bless you in the name of Jesus that you would know Jesus more wonderfully. I bless you that you'd receive healing if you need healing in your body, in your mind, in your emotions, in your spirit. I bless you to receive guidance from God, the help from God that you need. I bless you to flourish and prevail in whatever challenges you're facing in your life right now. And I bless you to feel hope and joy and love and peace no matter what's going on in your life, that you would feel that. And that would be a part of your very real experience as you trust in Jesus. I bless you with that. In the name of Jesus, may it be. All right, family, welcome back to our study about Moses during his time at Mount Sinai. Today we come to maybe the most awful moment. The most unbelievably awful moment when it comes to their time at Mount Sinai. It's the time where they make a golden calf, even though in chapter 20, with the mountain billowing with smoke and fire and thunder and lightning and earthquake, God had declared the 10 Commandments, which is, you will have no other gods besides me. You will not make an idol. They've heard this decreed from the mountaintop, and yet here we are. Golden calf moment. Which is what we're hitting today in chapter 32. Last week we talked about how the elders of Israel, they had a meal with God. They saw God. Moses, Aaron, Nadab and Abihu and the elders, they had this meal with God. They ate and drank with him. And then at the end of chapter 24, that story we talked about last week, God calls Moses, who brings Joshua with him, up again to the top of the mountain where he's going to hand him the 10 Commandments, this time inscribed on stone that he has written with his own finger, says chapter 31, verse 18. So Moses goes up. This is the context of this moment here. Moses gets up from that feast, leaving the elders and Aaron and that group, and he goes up onto the mountain. And we read at the end of chapter 24 these words. I don't think we read them last week, but this is how that chapter 24 ends. It said, "The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the seventh day, he called to Moses from the cloud. The appearance of the Lord's glory to the Israelites," this is the people down in the valley during these 40 days. The glory was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. It was like a consuming fire. Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain. He remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. That is the visual context of what's happening here during the golden calf incident. The consuming fire and cloud is on top of the mountain burning. And the billowing smoke. It is unbelievable what happens in this context. It's like you could just start to take anything for granted, almost, when it comes to God. So that's the context. And I'm going to start reading then, in light of that context, what takes place starting in chapter 32. It says this. It says, "When the people saw that Moses delayed in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said to him, 'Come, make gods for us who will go before us, because this Moses, the man who brought us up from Egypt, from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him.'" It's less than 40 days, guys. Aaron replied to them, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the gold rings that were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made it into an image of a calf. Then they said, "Israel, these are your gods who brought you up from the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it and made an announcement. "There will be a festival to Yahweh tomorrow." Early the next morning, they arose, offered burnt offerings, and presented fellowship offerings. The people sat down to eat and drink and got up to party. Again, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. During these 40 days, Moses is up in the consuming fire, billowing smoke, receiving commands about how to build the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, how to set up the priesthood, things like that. All the while, down in the valley, this is happening. Dark smoke, or consuming fire up above. The leaders, including Aaron, had just had a meal with God, right? And then they're building this golden calf within just days. We know where the golden calf worship site is. It's one of the easiest to identify. Here's a Google Earth shot with kind of the drawing so we can see where we're at. Moses is on the top of the mountain with Joshua, clearly labeled top, right? Again, all of that black bit, charred, burning, smoke billowing, right? All the way across there, massive amount in the horizon. The blue circle, that's where we saw pictures of last week. That is where they had the meal with God. The purple circle we saw several weeks ago, that's Elijah's cave. We saw some pictures of that. 2 weeks ago, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago, we saw the black circle area, which is where the altar was set up and where the pillars were. Sometime in the last couple weeks, I'm getting confused what was what now. I think that was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. We saw that area. The red lines, we saw pictures of the boundary markers, which have been discovered, and they're painted with warning signs on that area. The blue area is where the water was coming down out of the mountain. I just made it a little bit more blue, just so it stands out a little bit more. It's very obvious, even from Google Earth, where the water was. And again, flashing forward, Moses is going to grind it into the water, the golden calf into the water, and make them drink it. That's where the water is. The green circle area is where the golden calf site is. That's where it takes place. It's not in that worship area, but it's there in the valley there. This is what it looks like to this day. Now, you can see the pictures here. It's fenced off here. We got the picture there we go. So the top one is the stand. It's the stone stand. Again, it's all fenced off, but the fence is closed, so you can get a lot of pictures of it, even if you visit. It's not like some of these other sites. And they had the golden calf on top of this stand, able to be seen and oh, mighty cow, that kind of a thing, whatever they do there. And so you got it up on top, very visible up there. And then, just so you can see how the pictures connect, to the left of the stand, you can see a kind of a pile of rocks there, and then you can see that same pile of rocks in the background on the bottom picture there, right? So what you have here is the altar area, the altar area there, kind of in front or behind, depending on which way you're looking at these pictures. So you have the golden calf, and then you have an altar area there, which Moses set up for worship. Now you're like, okay, Brian, okay, that's nice and all, but like, how do we know? I mean, some rock piles. How do we know that this is the worship, the golden calf location? Easy. All over this place and nowhere else, in fact, only 2 other places in the world, including maybe like Crete and then the part of Egypt where these people are from, are petroglyphs of worshiping a cow, bovine. And so here's some pictures of the petroglyphs here. I mean, they're everywhere over this area. Egyptian, bovine. The bottom circle there, there's a worshiper there. Oh, mighty cow. Technically, on the top one, I don't know if you can see it, the top right one, you've got, at the very right, you got a cow, a worshiper, like kind of on those petroglyphs there. It's this worshiping of bovine all over these rocks, petroglyphs everywhere, all around there. There's also not just petroglyphs. There's a place where there's some paintings of the same sort of a thing. Paintings of the same paint that that red paint from the boundary marker paint. Remember that? Same thing where it tells a little bit of the story, including it shows pictures of them killing worshipers on that paint. I wish I had a picture of that. I couldn't specifically find that one, but there's lots of pictures of this on the internet if you want to look at the worshiping of the cow here. So anyways, this is this area, again, right across the valley where Moses would be coming down and he'd be able to see very clearly this worship event taking place. Okay, that's the location. Now, let's continue to read the story here from the Bible. In fact, I'm going to read for a little bit here, starting in verse 7. It said, that worship is happening, they're partying, and then it says in verse 7, the Lord spoke to Moses, go down at once. For your people you brought out from the land of Egypt have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned from the way I commanded them. They heard the 10 commandments. And they have made for themselves an image of a calf. They have bowed down to it, sacrificed to it, and said, Israel, these are your gods who brought you from the land of Egypt. The Lord also said to Moses, I have seen these people, and they are indeed stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger can burn against them and I can destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. Lord, Yahweh, why does your anger burn against your people you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and a strong hand? Why should the Egyptians say, he brought them out with an evil intent, to kill them in the mountains and eliminate them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger and relent concerning this disaster plan for your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. You swore to them by yourself and declared, I will make your offspring as numerous as the star in the sky, and will give your offspring all this land that I have promised, and they will inherit it forever. So the Lord relented concerning the disaster he had said he would bring on his people. Then Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, inscribed front and back, thus both sides. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was God's writing engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the sound of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, there's a sound of war in the camp. But Moses replied, it's not the sound of a victory cry, not the sound of a cry of defeat. I hear the sound of singing. Sounds like awful singing, but still singing nonetheless. As he approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses became enraged and threw the tablets out of his hands, smashing them at the base of the mountain. He took the calf they had made, burned it up, and ground it to powder. He scattered the powder over the surface of the water and forced the Israelites to drink the water. Then Moses asked Aaron, what did these people do to you that you have led them into such a grave sin? Don't be enraged, my lord. Aaron replied, you yourself know that the people are intent on evil. They said to me, make gods for us who will go before us, because this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. So I said to them, whoever has gold, take it off, and they gave it to me. When I threw it into the fire, out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were out of control, for Aaron had let them get out of control, making them a laughingstock to their enemies. And Moses stood at the camp's entrance and said, whoever is for Yahweh, come to me. And all the Levites gathered around him. He told them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Every man fasten his sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp from entrance to entrance, and each of you kill his brother, his friend, and his neighbor. The Levites did as Moses commanded, and about 3,000 men fell dead that day among the people. Afterwards, Moses said, today you have been dedicated to the Lord, since each man went against his son and his brother. Therefore, you have brought a blessing on yourselves today. The following day, Moses said to the people, you have committed a grave sin. Now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I will be able to atone for your sin. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, oh, these people have committed a grave sin. They have made a god of gold for themselves. Now, if you would only forgive their sin, but if not, please erase me from the book you have written. The Lord replied to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will erase from my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I told you about. See, my angel will go before you, but on the day that I settle accounts, I will hold them accountable for their sin. And the Lord inflicted a plague on the people for what they did with the calf Aaron had made. Such a shocking story. Especially thinking, that they heard the 10 Commandments declared in this awesomeness. That they heard God's voice in that moment. They heard not to make an idol. They heard not to have any other gods besides him, and yet to ascribe the God who would save them to this image of a calf. It's just awful. Now, there's so much I would love to say about this chapter. There's three messages that I was thinking about, a fourth one even as I was reading it just then, that I'd love to just spend 4 weeks just preaching different lessons from this chapter, but I don't have time for that in this series or even today. And so I am going to give you 3 starter thoughts. 3 starter thoughts, 3 thoughts for you to think about as you go out from this week, and I think maybe one of them is for you. So I'll give you these 3 thoughts, and I want you to think which one is for me to take further, which one is for me to think more on as I go throughout the week here. 3 different lessons, one probably for you. The first one that might be for you is there's a warning here about delay. There's a warning about delay, a warning about our propensity to give up on following God when things aren't happening fast enough, in our opinion. Is this a starter thought for you to be thinking about this week? The chapter begins in verse 1 with the words, "When the people saw that Moses delayed in coming down." That's the context for all of this awfulness. When the people saw that Moses delayed in coming down. He was up there more than a month, 40 days or so, and they're looking up at the fire, and they're like, we don't know what's happened to this guy. And so they gather around Aaron, make a gods for us. Again, they've heard the Ten Commandments, but because of the delay, they give up on waiting, and they give up on obeying God. I see this everywhere. Christians giving up, waiting for God because they feel like things aren't happening. They're not happening soon enough. They're not happening on the timelines. And so they say things like, waiting for God, I tried that. It didn't work. And so now I am giving up on God, or now I am just going to do what I need to do because God didn't do what I needed him to do. I'm giving up waiting on God. There's so many examples. Like the Bible tells believers not to marry unbelievers. And yet how many times over the history of Rehope, I have heard of Christians out there somewhere in the city who give up on waiting for God and all this because he's taking too long, in their opinion, to bring them a relationship that they want. And so they turn away from God's direction in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and other places in the Bible, this direction to only marry believers. And they were like, okay, I gave God a chance, but now he's taken too long. So I'm going to walk in my own way as opposed to how God directs. Or Christians who feel pressures at work or in their studies or in life or whatever, and they just feel like, I prayed, I asked God to help me in this moment, but he didn't help me soon enough, and so now I need to take matters in my own hands, and I need to cut this corner, compromise here, change this, sin here. And how many of the sins that we do are done because we don't keep waiting? We give up on waiting for God to do his thing, and we just start taking matters into our own hands. Again, be warned about the great temptation to stop waiting for God and to turn away then from godliness and obedience. That's lesson number one. That's a starter lesson for today. Maybe for some of you, you're like, okay, that's my lesson that I need to kind of spend more time chewing on. Me wrestling with delay and waiting for God. But that's not for all of you. Maybe for some of you, there's a lesson number two, an encouragement about the power of intercessory prayer. More intercessory prayer is going to be taking place in Glasgow over the next 14 days than ever in the history of the world in such a concentrated period of time when it comes to our city in this area. Like, it is prayer time. People are coming to our city to pray. They're coming from around the world to pray in light of the global COP26 conference about the future of our planet. It is. Some of you are here to pray, there's a lesson here about how to pray more effectively. If you want to be effective as possible when you're praying on behalf of something, maybe COP26, maybe things in your life, you're going to want to study this chapter a little bit more closely when it comes to Moses, more than what we can talk about today. But Moses does three things here in his intercessory prayer, but they all are hinging on answering the most important prayer question. Why should God answer these prayers? If you're praying for COP26, if you're praying for anything, you want to be able to answer the question, why is it good for God to answer these prayers? In Moses' situation, why is it good for God to show mercy and forgiveness and not destroy his people? Well, his reasons were, number one, he appeals to God to protect his own reputation. God's reputation is a good reason. You know, they will think of you as weak and evil if you destroy the people. He appeals to God to remember his promises. God, you promised Abraham and Isaac and Jacob that their descendants would inherit the land. So, based on that, and then a little bit later in the story, he appeals God just to forgive, and he identifies with those who need forgiving. And there's good thoughts there, but ultimately, when you're making your appeals, you want to be thinking through what you're asking God to do and why it's good. God, because of your love for your creation, because of the work of your hands, and because of your mercy and your forgiveness and grace and all that kind of stuff. So, some of you, you need this encouragement or this reminder when you're going to go through a season of praying and intercessory prayer to stay anchored on that question. Why should God answer these prayers? Why should God answer these prayers? That's not for all of you, but that is for some of you in these next days. The first one, warning about delay. The second starter one is the encouragement about the power of intercessory prayer. And the third lesson, maybe this one's for some of you, is there's a revelation of the surprising grace of God in this story. Aaron. Like, I am stunned at how much grace is given to Aaron in this story. Remember, Aaron in chapter 20, he goes up into the thick darkness, into the fire, into the smoke, into the thunder, into the lightning, up there where the earthquakes are. He goes up there with Moses in chapter 20. Aaron, he had a meal with God within the last 40 days where he saw God with the elder. He was there. He saw Aaron. He was within the last year in Egypt confronting Pharaoh with Moses. There, face to face, saying things exactly how they were working together while confronting. They were together in those moments with the plagues of Egypt and going through all the Exodus. Aaron has seen God. He has been in these such special moments, and yet here, only days after having a meal with God, what is he doing? He tells the people to bring them gold. And then he fashions a calf with an engraving tool. I love it that the Bible adds exactly how he did it, just so you don't get confused about it popped out of the fire story, right? An engraving tool, okay? And then he made this idol. Not only that, he built an altar for the idol to be worshipped on. And then he offers offerings for this cow idol. And then he oversees this worship party that gets a little bit out of control. For the actual hieroglyphics, that were petroglyph, or whatever they are, those carvings or whatever, many of them make it very clear that they're naked. That they're dancing around naked in this worship out of control party. Then he lies to Moses about how the calf was made. There was a fire, and then it jumped out, and then we said, "Almighty cow!" Right? That's sort of a thing. Like he lies. So I'm thinking of that in the context. This is all happening while the fires on the mountain, the consuming fires on the top of the mountain, while the smoke's at the top of the mountain. And I'm thinking about this story, and I'm like, what is going to happen to Aaron? Like, in light of all this, what do you think is going to happen to Aaron? This is Old Testament, you know? What is going to happen to Aaron? I'm like, oh, he's a goner. This is going to be like I don't know how, but this is not going to go good for Aaron, right? What happens? He becomes the first high priest of the nation to Yahweh, God of the Bible. Like, that's it. Like, that's what happens to him. He becomes high priest. He hasn't officially been a designated high priest yet. The instructions have come at the top of the mountain, but that stuns me. Does that stun you? What happens to Aaron after all that Aaron had seen about God and this massive, massive mistake, breaking a couple of the 10 Commandments and leading the nation into idol worshiping of this golden cow, which he made himself? Not only does he live, which stuns me, he becomes the first high priest of the nation to Yahweh, God of the Bible. I marvel at the grace of God shown to this very undeserving Aaron in the Old Testament. And I tell you what, if God can take this Aaron, who led the nation into idol worship after having had a meal with God and after seeing so much about God, and if God can give this Aaron such surprising grace and this surprising second chance, I don't even know if it says anything about much of a reprimand at all. With all the lying and everything, if he can give a second chance to this Aaron, how much more, because of Jesus, can God give you a surprising amount of grace? And you, second chance after second chance after second chance because of Jesus. I mean, maybe you gave up waiting on God, and you turned away from him for a season. Maybe you used to follow God, but then you've just gone off and done your own thing. But whatever, no matter how badly that you've messed up, no matter like how evil or awful that you have been, because of Jesus, if you return to him, if you turn to him, there is so much a surprising amount of grace and second chances and forgiveness available to you because of Jesus, because of the cross. Your past mistakes do not mean that you don't have an extremely godly future. There's surprising forgiveness and grace through Jesus. Do you need to return to him? Is that the lesson that you need today? You need to confess your mistakes, receive that grace. If it can be given to Aaron in the Old Testament, how much more can it be given to you through Jesus today? The challenge for today is, which lesson do you need to respond to and keep pondering and take further this week? The delay warning one, or the intercessory prayer piece. I don't know, everybody anchored in why should God answer these prayers? Or just the surprising grace in front of you about returning to Jesus and giving your life to him. Just think about how is it that you can take this further yourself? There's so much in this chapter. It's irritating how quickly we blaze through it today, but hopefully this will start you off on a journey this week of growth in one of these areas. Let me pray for us as we get going, as we go further on here. God, I marvel at your grace. I thank you for second chances. I thank you for your mercy. I thank you that you are the God who hears prayers and acts and hears and shows mercy and forgiveness and grace. I know that all of us mess up and we fall short of how you'd want us to be. Thank you for your forgiveness and mercy. If there's people here or listening who just know, okay, I need to rededicate my life to following Jesus, or I need to give my life to following Jesus for the first time, and I need to appeal to Jesus for forgiveness and grace and a new start, I suggest praying something like this. God, here I am. I need a second chance. I need another chance, another chance. I need your forgiveness. I wasn't patient enough. I turned away from your way. I sinned. I fell away from you, or I haven't walked with you. But I need your mercy, your grace, your forgiveness. In Jesus, forgive me. I now dedicate my life to Jesus, or recommit my life to following Jesus, whether things go good or whether things are challenging. Forgive me. Lead me forward. I need you. I need your help. Fill me with your Spirit and lead me along this new beginning. In Jesus' name I pray.